Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another podcast with your host, Richard.
And Jenny.
And this is the Fish Flip Podcast. And today we have a very special topic for you. We are going to be talking about imposter syndrome. Now, what is imposter syndrome? Let's see. It's an internal experience of self-doubt in a person's competence, most particularly in intelligence and achievements. There's a little bit of element of Perfectionism, thank you. And the otherwise social context, say like minorities, in a large group.
Feeling like you're different from others.
Exactly. So boiling it down, basically feeling like a fraud, a person with a mask on pretending to fit in where they are. This was identified by Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes roughly more than 40 years ago. These two are social psychologists, I believe. And it basically affects every age groups and affects across genders. It is now though found to be more proportionally towards minorities currently. So this seems to be what's going on. In those kind of groups.
This is the trend we're seeing recently. Whereas in the 70s, when they first started studying this, it was most common in women, which makes sense because at that time they were
it was a new women's rights kind of type of a change of social context.
And now men, women, everyone, especially minorities, experience this.
So what we read from the International Journal of Behavioral Science, it is estimated that 70% of people will experience this at least once in their life. So calling it a syndrome kind of downplays its universality.
Yet it's not a mental illness.
And it's not an illness either. No. So it should be also noted that it's not exactly tied to depression, but rather it may lead to changes in levels of anxiety, which is what is tied to depression that way. So in its own, it's not a cause of depression. I believe we were looking around previously trying to figure out what and why imposter syndrome exists. And I found that it is due to this, I guess you call it a social phenomenon of pluralistic ignorance, which sounds like a really juicy topic we can dissect later on at another podcast. Most people believe, being affected by pluralistic ignorance, most people believe this feeling of self-doubt, so this feeling of imposter syndrome, as applying only to themselves, since most of them go through these kind of syndrome not knowing how hard their peers have had to work or how difficult their peers have found tasks that they are facing themselves. So their level of self-doubt is not curbed by any means of measure or a benchmark of what happens with their peers.
It's hard to measure who feels more like an imposter.
Exactly. So this pluralistic ignorance is just the not understanding of that idea or that of what's the truth is behind their own level of self-doubt and why it's being caused to be that way. I have I think one problem that leads into imposter syndrome is kind of like not appreciating your own accomplishments. So everybody has their strengths, and just for example, if somebody else has a strength in a topic that you're not very good at, it doesn't mean that you're an imposter when you're working on that on that topic, or you try to learn more about the topic. It is just you trying to improve yourself and try to grow.
And everyone experiences this when they join a new club or start a new hobby. You go to the center wherever the club takes place, or even like a knitting circle, let's say, and everyone's really good at knitting, and there you are sitting at the circle squished between two grannies who have 50 years on you, feeling like I don't belong here because I can't knit.
Who are you?
I can't knit a sweater and socks. All I can do is the scarf, and even that's crooked. Like, everyone experiences this when they start something that's unfamiliar.
I remember back in high school, I joined a crochet club for a while,
Cool.
and I really tried to learn. I got some of those knitting pins,
Needles.
needles. Sorry, see,
You fraud!
and I tried to pick up on it, and yeah, I learned quite a bit. And of course, I had a sense of like I'm not, I'm no expert in crochet, or I don't have any qualification. These people are like way out of my own kind of type of group of folks that I would hang with, and it just seems so alien to me to be a part of it. But yeah, luckily it was very welcoming, and everybody's was very helpful in the group.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was able to make something out of it. And I believe I knitted a scarf, if I recall
Excellent.
correctly. Yeah, it was a long time ago, but I joined. For the most part of it, I joined to kind of like get a new experience, to kind of meet a group of people. And I think maybe it's mostly that mindset of trying to just improve that, resulted in me not feeling like an outsider, along with the fact that people were very connecting, I guess. They were very open.
Yeah.
Right?
Because the
so it
other
felt very
people
good.
don't think that you're a fraud. They don't think that you don't belong. Because I think humans, I read, naturally default to truth. I read that in the book that you're lending me, Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah.
People default
Great
to
author.
truth. So if you say, I'm a knitter, I'm in the knitting club, they will not assume that you're lying or that you're an imposter, because why would they? It takes so much
Yeah.
more effort to assume that.
That's fair. Yeah. People generally are trusting unless proven otherwise,
Yeah.
right? So their default to truth is default in trust.
Yeah. What's another symptom?
Now, okay, imagine this. Tell me if this sounds like you. This may or may not sound like you, but imagine you're back in school and you got a really good grade on like an assignment, and all you can think to yourself is, great, I finished this assignment. Where you could have been thinking, hey, you finished an assignment and you've gained a great deal of experience. You're more wise in a certain topic. So instead of appreciating this new found knowledge and wisdom, you kind of just focus on, okay, what do I have to do next? You're off on the next pursuit immediately, and you don't celebrate your achievements. Is this indicative of any of your past years?
It would depend on the class, but I would say as a student, we're quite busy, so we tend to look at our grades, and if they're satisfactory, think, okay, great, maybe I fooled the teacher that time, and then move on to the next one. But for the courses that I truly enjoyed, I would think, yes, I'm a better writer, I'm a better insert blank here. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and I understand like a lot of times we can be very busy with our tasks because we often deal with more than one issue at a time. But I think one part of that is just that the imposter syndrome issue is just that we don't reflect on what we have accomplished enough, and sometimes we don't even reflect on them at all. And that may be in part due to the fact that it may not be a topic that you're interested in. But yeah, and that also comes out to where we need to kind of recognize our own strengths a little bit, our strengths and maybe our interests. But to kind of actually think about in your interest and in your strength what you've done and how to reinforce your learning, and the amount of your accomplishments really help against that feeling of self-doubt that you would have.
So reflecting on your accomplishments is one way to combat imposter syndrome.
That's right. Yeah. I agree. Okay, so here's another one. Do you feel the need to be the most qualified person in the room in, say, your industry, right? Whatever your profession is. If there's another person that's more qualified than you or way more qualified than you, do you feel like your own knowledge and opinions are like unimportant?
A little bit. I would say that I used to feel like I always had to be the most knowledgeable staff member and that I wanted to know the most. I wanted to be the one that had all the answers. And so if someone else had a better answer than me, I would feel a little bit like, I'm not good enough. I need to read more. I need to study more about this. But recently I've been getting better at that. I've been feeling okay about not knowing everything.
Yeah, and I think the issue is that people cannot demand to know everything at all times. That isn't that just not technically anybody's job. Somebody may know more in a certain field than you, but they may have had more time in that field. So you have to give credit to that element. And you if put in the work, will gain the same amount of knowledge, and you can see them as a mentor who can provide you that information that you need, rather than feeling like, oh, because I lack information, I'm a fake, because you haven't had that chance or time to go through what you need to learn. So that's I think that's another one that leads people to kind of raise their level of self-doubt.
Yeah, and feeling like you must be an expert on everything in some ways can actually be a roadblock to learning, because then if you feel like you must be the expert and you view other people as lesser experts, you might not listen to what they have to say when
you close yourself off to new learning. Right, if that's the case. If you feel like you need to seem as if you are the expert, you cut off that kind of outlook, or that kind of mindset that, oh, there is more for me to gain from learning from other people. And if you see yourself as being the top and there's nothing more, then if that day ever comes where you do learn something that you didn't know, or you're proven wrong, you most definitely will feel like an imposter, because you thought you knew it all and you self-proclaimed experts didn't catch on to something. So I think just again, that mindset, I think it comes back to that mindset again. Having a growth mindset really proves to be useful to better yourself, and also curb this imposter syndrome that everybody seems to keep getting. Okay. So a lot of people with imposter syndrome also agonize over smallest mistakes or flaws in their work. They like to attribute their success to outside factors, or luck, for example. They're sensitive to constructive criticism, and everybody has to be honest with themselves here, and it could be a very sensitive thing to offer criticism sometimes for a few people. And it may be hard to maybe hear from somebody. And I would say sometimes when who you see as your peer, when you hear them criticize you, like I guess sometimes it could take people by surprise too, and they may not be expecting it.
But it's constructive criticism. Yeah,
exactly. So like something that is meant from an unbiased, unsubjective, just an objective in an objective sense. They're trying to provide you an opinion that may help you in whatever you're facing.
And sometimes the constructive criticism is not constructive, and actually whoever is giving you the criticism doesn't know what they're talking about, but that's a different topic.
Is this from an experience at all, or?
I have been that person probably many times, giving the...
What was about the...
trying to give constructive criticism, but actually maybe not knowing exactly what I'm talking about. And everyone has received bad advice, and everyone has given bad advice.
Yeah. I think the important thing is to just actually consider the advice before brushing it off or letting it completely soak in. It is always sensible to kind of review what people are saying rather than write it off. Now, another element of people with imposter syndrome is they downplay their achievements.
Yeah.
So
I read that anyone who feels like they are experiencing imposter syndrome, they aren't able to internalize and own their successes. They just aren't able to say, I did that. I did a good job.
Yeah, and you have to mark it down for yourself and remind yourself why you believe you know a certain topic.
So all of your points, they relate to, 5 different types of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I believe Dr. Valerie Young wrote a few books on this, and she talked about some specific characters of imposter syndrome. These kind of personalities are as follows. They're a perfectionist, the person who has to get everything right, or if they make a mistake
Fraud.
or a flaw, they're apparently not the real thing. The second one is the superwoman or superman, the personality who has to be constantly working and outworking their peers, or they are not
Fraud.
a real deal. Second. And then we have our third one, the natural genius, the one who is just so talented. They can get any topic down. They can learn any subject quickly. And if they don't know a topic and they can't learn it in a short amount of time, they're
Fraud.
Supposedly, and are not able to actually put in the time and learn a certain topic they're probably not familiar with. And then we have the fourth personality, the soloist, the person who has to accomplish everything on their own without the help of others. God forbid they get the help of others.
Fraud.
Otherwise, they're a fraud. And then we have the last personality, the expert, the person who believes that they need to know everything. And if there is a topic that is brought up that they don't know about, they get the sense of imposter syndrome and this level of self-doubt.
Fraud.
And they supposedly become a fraud. So these are the 5, I guess,
Types.
probably, most prevalent types of personalities for imposter syndrome. And I guess I would say, though, I would like to add in there, though, that being a minority itself is maybe a different kind of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Just being in a group where everybody's maybe a little bit different from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I would say, speaking from personal experience here, coming to Canada, that in itself, when I was living in a different society completely, I had totally different beliefs when I came here. I wanted different things and I had different ideals. And just seeing everybody else, I totally felt like an imposter. And I'm very grateful that I found the kind of communities that I did. Being able to commingle with people that have similar beliefs to you really help you transition into a society, and I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, like the important thing is there that you go find a source to connect with. You find others who may share this kind of like situation with you, or even just talk to someone else who may have like an imposter syndrome of their own. Maybe another topic, but it's all about feeling like you're the odd one out. You're not the real deal. Like for me, it was not feeling like I'm an actual Canadian, even though I've lived in Canada at that point in time. After I came to Canada for like a couple of years, that feeling stayed with me for a long time. I will have to say. But yeah, and you know what? Eventually, I learned. It's you are who you are. And you will come to grow and learn other people's perspectives, and you'll see many people who gone through that imposter syndrome, and just know that you are you, and you're not a fake.
Yeah, no one is a fake.
And if you do feel like an imposter in that kind of sense of imposter syndrome, perhaps you may be in a different type of friend group than than the type of social group that you probably looking to be with, truthfully.
Yeah,
that could be another.
They do say that imposter syndrome is reduced greatly when you feel that you are similar to the people around you.
Yeah, so that's and all of that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Being in a different group than the one you're probably truthfully more aligned with, right? My truthful opinion is that I think imposter syndrome kind of comes from a level of not understanding yourself as well. People who don't know themselves very well often end up in places, maybe doing certain things that they don't really align with, and they may get that sense of the imposter syndrome just from the bare fact that they haven't really found their own kind of personalities and the kind of person that they want to be, and being in that state of mind, you may be doing things foreign to what you truly want. I
don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Because, like I mentioned earlier, there's a really famous author, Maya Angelou, and she's written 11 published novels, successful novels. She still feels that imposter syndrome before she starts a book, as if, this time they're going to find her out that she's not really a writer, but of course she is a writer. And even myself, I know I'm a baker and I love baking, but when I first started work at my new job, I felt like I don't belong here. I'm just faking. I'm just, yes, I know how to do the things while figuring out how to do the things.
I think what I was thinking in terms of that, because it seems to me like the Maya, that author, for her, her imposter syndrome comes or stems from a level of like professionalism that she doesn't believe she's a writer, even though she is successful. For me, it's more along the lines of like a personality thing, like, oh, do I belong in this personality sphere, or am I this type of person? Maybe a little less to do with like professionalism, right? Competency or something along the lines of that. But more to do with it. To put it in a playground sense, it's like, who you're hanging with. You think you're in a punk group, but maybe you're not really a punk personality deep down inside. Maybe you're more of a homebody, right? You're more warm and generous type of personality. Things like that, I think, is what I was thinking about. So like not knowing yourself yet, and maybe what you like, and just going with what people like.
I would say that could be a type or a symptom for some people.
Yeah. But yeah, so like that, that's just my opinion. Now, like it's I think it's one element that contributes to people's sense of being an imposter.
Yeah,
right?
I think when you're younger, yes, definitely.
Exactly, and as people grow older, they learn a lot more about themselves. They're a lot more in tune with the kind of comfort that that they're in and who they are most comfortable to be.
But I still think you experience this at all different ages and stages of life. Even
most definitely,
if you
yes.
know yourself, you
Yeah.
can still feel like like the perfectionist sense of imposter syndrome, or the Superman sense.
Yeah.
Which one of those 5 do you think you identify with the most? Or maybe none. Maybe
I will say, what most people identify, from what I've read, most people identify with a couple of them. It's not uncommon to be falling under multiple categories here. And I think it's actually rare that if you don't identify with any of them, because at some point, because like we were saying, 70% of people experience this, so it's either in one element or in all 5 personality categories. For me personally, it's mostly the perfectionist at this point. I would say, actually, let's be full here. The perfectionists, the soloists, the experts. Oh my god. I think I've been through all 5 of them. I'm a total fake. Yeah, it's mostly, I guess, in my job, day-to-day job, and I think that makes the most sense as to where I would have experienced this. I'm very comfortable on my own these days. If only for, like, say, when we're doing professional work, you get an odd sense of this now and then, right? Yeah.
I want to know who the 30% of people are who never go through experiencing imposter syndrome. Where are you? Imagine you, like,
They're
sitting
content.
on some fat pillows, just little cherubs of contentment.
Maybe they know.
The world is grand.
Yeah, they know about all this kind of stuff and they're just blissful.
Oh, I guess narcissists wouldn't experience it. Maybe in some aspects. Anyways.
Like, what about those personality types that can set their own level of standard? So, instead of, like, feeling like you got self-doubt because you're not meeting a certain standard, what if they're just not meeting your standard?
Are you raising the roof? Oh.
No, raising it up so I can drop it.
Not funny.
That's a workout.
Oh, fraud.
Yeah. Thanks. And yeah, for all of you out there, even Albert Einstein described himself as an involuntary swindler. So, can you believe this? The father of modern physics, the person who invented E = mc squared, didn't feel like his work deserved praise or attention, into that kind of a feeling. Yeah, and the imposter syndrome is a false insecurity, right? It stems from beliefs that are not grounded and rooted. It's an assumption of other people that you make that is not tested by truth. And I would tell you, because everybody, or almost everybody, experiences this, that they're all going through some level of, their own obstacles, and maybe you're just going through a different type of obstacle that they are, right? But that doesn't make you an imposter. It just means everybody's going through the process of learning and growing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is also known, if you remember, as the pluralistic ignorance. So keep in mind a pluralistic ignorance.
One more time. Say that one more time.
I had a lot of trouble trying to say this.
Say it 3 times fast.
Fraud. Pluralistic ignorance.
What a fraud.
Yeah. So don't let your mind trick you into thinking locally. Reach out. Talk to others. Recognize your expertise. Adopt a growth mindset. Remember, nobody's perfect. You're allowed to make mistakes as well.
You should make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're at the end of the road.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Well, I want to give a quick shout out and thank you to Elizabeth Cox. She is an educator on YouTube. I learned quite a bit about imposter syndrome from her. She also has a lot of other educational videos that you may very well learn a lot from if you like to tune into her. And yeah, and
she's not sponsoring this podcast.
She's not sponsoring this podcast. I'm just wanting to give some credit.
And she is not watching this podcast.
No. But if she does, that wouldn't be too bad. I'd be happy, like, if she saw this and and kind of thought to herself, wow, I am making impressions on people.
I'm not a fraud after all.
Maybe she's going through it again. Yeah. Imposter syndrome, everybody. So yeah, this has been another Fish Flip podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, I'm Richard.
I'm Jenny.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah.